How we doing? Paul Begley here. It's crazy. I mean, here recently, what's going on? We had protesting in England, the students, because Britain, raised their tuition, tripled it. So they went crazy, and then they even kicked Prince Charles's car door, broke a window, threw some paint on him. We had that going on. You had Greece. You had the protesting in Greece. Protesting going on everywhere. I mean, several countries were here just recently. Nobody can get a handle. A lot of students were upset with things. Well, let's go to Venezuela. That's right. Hugo Chavez. The great Hugo Chavez. Who, this guy is trying everything he can to systematically turn Venezuela into a communist state. He's doing it differently than Fidel Castro did. He's doing it by bits and pieces. He's actually just reading that right out of the playbook of Adolf Hitler. And that is, you get in position, you get elected, and you one by one, you start building these loyalists. And then you start having them change the Constitution by passing amendments and ratification of different powers that you give the Presidente, Hugo Chavez. So, here's what it says. Let's quickly. Reuters says Venezuela's security forces fired water cannons and rubber bullets Thursday to disperse hundreds of students protesting against a new law tightening the government's control over the universities. And once again, here's the communist mentality. Control the media. Control the education. And then you can get to the point where you can control the people. Take the guns out of their hands. Clamp down on their religious freedoms. If they don't have a voice, they don't have a choice. I tag that one. That's a good one. The measure passed in the early hours. It's the latest in a package of laws that's been rushed through by the National Assembly to entrench President Hugo Chavez, self-styled socialist revolution, before a new parliament is sworn in next month. So he's following the rules, but they're changing the rules to eventually there'll be no rules left, and there'll be a dictator. The students say the law gives too much power to the government, and they're right. And it aims to promote socialist ideology and will be used to crack down on the autonomous universities that have long been centers of opposition to the president's leftist agenda. So that's how he's got to silence the voice so there is no choice. In the latest of the string of minor protests against the new laws, about 500 students and demonstrators, and actually what I understand is it was more like 2,000, but okay, converged in downtown. Some waved signs reading, "We will not obey your law. I'll swap Christmas for freedom." It's starting. It's starting. And they were confronted by the National Guard troops in helmets and riot gear. And they clashed briefly, blocked a major highway. Reuters witnesses said a photographer from another news agency was hurt when he was hit in the head by a rock. Well, elsewhere, students supporters of Chavez celebrated the passing of the measure, stringing up a copy of the old university law and beating it with sticks. So there were some that loved Chavez. You're going to have those that are going to be loyal because they see what's coming and they believe in the communistic ideology. Much like America. I mean, Barack Obama is systematic. He took over NASA, took over the auto industry. Might as well say he took over the banks, took over the school loans. Gays are now in the military. They're going to be allowed to go. Next to be gay marriage. Expand abortion rights. Now, just this systematic leftist liberal ideology hinging on socialism, and believe me, Obama's a socialist, but hinging on the fringes of communism. Definitely it's happening in Venezuela. Now let's read on. So outgoing National Assembly, in other words, they're in a lame duck session just like in America, which is dominated by Chavez loyalists, has passed a raft of legislation Doesn't it sound familiar to America? In recent days, including bills making it easier for the government to nationalize the banks. Hello. Police criticism on the web. Hello. What just happened? President Barack Obama just appointed 3 people to be in charge of the airways or the cables or the broadband width of the internet. You know, the FCC is in charge of. You can't just open a television station or open a radio station and just plug it in and start airing it, even though the technology exists. You have to get permits by the FCC, and they only grant those out to certain people. That's to control. The problem is the internet doesn't have any controls, so everybody can play. So Obama's got to crack down on the freedom of speech, and so is Hugo Chavez. So, most controversial among those was the enabling law that gives Chavez the power to rule the continent's biggest oil producers by decree. For the next 18 months, he's in charge of all of the oil industry, which was a private industry, taking him to within 6 months of his next presidential election. I don't think he's ever going to leave office. I've been saying that Hugo Chavez will not leave office. He will become a dictator at the end of his presidential term, and they will vote him in, just like they did Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. I'm Paul Begley. Thank God for some protesters still in the streets.